Eric Arzubi, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Frontier Psychiatry.
What inspired you to get into the mental health field?
Well, great question. This is actually a second career for me. I used to work in finance back in the 90s, and really was lacking. I don't know. I was looking around at the older sort of my bosses, and I really didn't see a role model who I wanted to be like. Let's say when I was older, and this is during my 20s, and I was in New York City working at Morgan Stanley. I kept thinking about my pediatrician. His name was Dr. Richard Narkowitz from Vermont, and I always looked up to him. I always admired him, and I thought, man, maybe I should go into medicine. So I had to go back to school, do all my pre-med work, and when I was trying to decide what specialty to go into eventually, I landed on child psychiatry. While I was doing my pre-med work and going to medical school, I did thousands of hours of tutoring middle school and high school students, and I really loved spending time with the kids and their families, and decided that the best way to do that was doing child psychiatry. So that's kind of a long answer, but that's the truth.
Yeah, what are some of your methods?
Some of my methods, well, try to be as evidence-based as possible, really sticking to what the evidence dictates. But beyond that, you could have the best toolbox in the world, but if you're not sort of approachable, curious, validate what your patients and their families are going through. You could come up with evidence-based tools, but you really need that therapeutic alliance and the connection. So, I would tell you the most important method I would tell you is really trying to connect as meaningfully as possible with my patients and their families.
Yeah, have you seen your patients' confidence level rise as they go through the process?
Oh, sure. Right, because what's happening is beyond medication or a specific type of therapy, which, both of which are important to consider. You don't always need medications, but you certainly always do need some sort of talk therapy. And that's one of the things I loved about tutoring when I was doing this before I was a psychiatrist, is I saw their confidence levels go up. The kids felt more empowered. They felt they had more agency. They felt they had more tools and skills to make it through, let's say, a class or a test. And the same way with my patients now, I see their confidence go up. They start to understand their own feelings, their own emotions, and they start to build tools and skills so that they can really manage and regulate those emotions more effectively. So yeah, their confidence definitely goes up.
Yeah, with working with kids, do you see the stigma of just talking about mental health lessening?
I do. It's become less difficult to speak about mental health issues, mental illness, substance use disorders, addiction. I think people are getting much more comfortable with saying those words out loud. We're still a ways away from going from being able to say those things out loud to still truly getting rid of the sort of quiet stigma. And Dr. Tom Insel, he used to be the head of the National Institute for Mental Health, and he wrote a book called Healing, and he talks about stigma as something else. He actually calls it discrimination, which I think is a powerful and accurate way to call it, right? Because stigma in the end it's discrimination. It's thinking differently about people who struggle with mental health problems. So yeah, again, people are talking about mental illness and substance use disorders in a way that's easier, but it's still going to take some time before stigma or the discrimination doesn't affect us.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
Great question. So, weirdly enough, this work gives me purpose, and having a sense of purpose every day, that alone feels good. And actually, again, I'm quoting Dr. Insel, one of the things, when he talks about kind of ways that people can recover and heal from mental health problems or even prevent them is, purpose is one of them, people is another, and I was trying to think, I can't remember people, um, purpose, and I forget what the third one. There were three P's, but anyway. So for me, having a sense of purpose is helpful. I think it's protective for me because I have meaning in what I do. Now, it's stressful, it's difficult, and so certainly, spending time with family, humor is an important tool. I love watching stand-up comedy, and certainly exercise are some of the things I do. So those are things I do, and I also have had anxiety for well over 20 years, and I take medication for that, and so I try to stay on top of my medication for anxiety, and I'm probably not going to therapy as much as I should, but I will. Maybe this will inspire me to go back.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about your mental health journey?
Sure. Yeah. So when I left my career in finance, this is back when I was around 30 years old. It was 1999. I decided to leave a really well-paying job at Morgan Stanley in New York City, and I went from being a vice president at Morgan Stanley to a college student crashing at my parents' house. And because I had to go back and take all the pre-med classes again, including physics, chemistry, organic chemistry, biology, I had to do all those labs. And I think that change, that really shift in identity, going from having this grown-up job with a lot of responsibility to being a student doing homework in my room at my parents' house, I think really threw me for a loop. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to try and be a perfect student so I could get into a great medical school because, gosh, if I didn't do that, everybody's going to judge me for making a really bad decision. And the pressure got to me. And about 9 months into my pre-med journey, I developed really, really severe anxiety to the point where I was pretty paralyzed and couldn't sleep and had to take 2 or 3 months off from school to try and recover. And that was my first encounter really with a professional mental health, with a mental health professional. So I went and saw a psychiatrist and a therapist when I was in New York City, and thank goodness for that. That allowed me to bounce back and go back to school.
Yeah, and you said something earlier about, the stress and of talking with your clients and how it affects your life. How do you separate your life and your support with the clients?
So, like I said, it's for me. Strangely enough, me talking with my patients is actually probably the least stressful thing in my job. Strangely enough, I enjoy the time I spend with my patients. It allows me to connect with another human, get to know them at a deep level. And it's a privilege, really, to have people open up about some very difficult things. So it's energizing for me. I would tell you the hardest part is really the stress around, managing and running a psychiatric practice, hiring people, making sure we're, financially viable, thinking about, there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of risk right now around some changes in regulations that might affect telehealth and access to telemedicine and certain medications. And to be honest, those are the things that stress me out more than really the work with patients. The work with patients is really a source of joy and really meaning for me. It's the other stuff is trying to stay in business and grow our business so that we can reach more patients, and that's really more stressful. But again, it provides some meaning and a mission and purpose.
With your practice, what is it like working with people that have a similar mission?
Oh, it's great. That's why I really, I'm co-founder of Frontier Psychiatry. My partner, Reza Hosseini Gomi, he's a psychiatrist as well. It's great. We created a practice from nothing. Right now, we're in 3 states. We're in Montana, Alaska, and Wyoming. We care for a lot of patients. Well over 4,000 patients a month now, and the fact that we have the ability to really change people's lives and improve access to care, it's great because working as part of a bigger organization, there's other dynamics and politics, and not everybody's aligned. So we have the freedom to really hire people whose mission is aligned with ours, whose purpose is aligned with ours, and are really excited to make a difference by joining our team.
What would you say to anyone going through a tough time?
Tough times are rarely permanent. Again, I'm just speaking from my experience. One of the, and it's maybe sounds trite, but one of the few things we know for sure is that things never stay the same. It can feel, and I guess the other thing I would say is I know what it feels like, and so I try as much as possible to kind of validate and normalize. And what I mean is, people going through a difficult time feel lonely, they feel like it'll last forever, and they feel like nobody's helping, or nobody's coming to help. And so what I would invite someone who's having a hard time to do is, you're not alone. Things never stay the same. And I've until now I've never met anybody who's had a permanent anxiety attack. And still, anxiety can feel like it's going to last forever. So, and the other thing is, in the moments when things are better and don't feel as terrible, I would invite people to really pay attention to those moments and give thanks and gratitude for moments when things are going okay. And even when they're not going okay, there are always things to be grateful for, and really make it a practice, because unfortunately our brains are really, really good at beating ourselves up, at really negative self-talk. And so we need to build a new muscle, and that new muscle needs to be positive self-talk, self-compassion. And so I would invite anyone who's watching and listening is really start building that muscle today and work on it every day like any muscle.
And I found out about you on LinkedIn when I saw your posts, and they're very good. So what is it like getting your thoughts and ideas out to the public?
I enjoy it. I mean, I started doing it regularly over a year ago, and it's really forced me to think every day about kind of what's important, not only what's important to me, but what's important to other people, right? So by putting my thoughts out into public, if I don't think about what the public needs, those posts would go nowhere, right? Nobody would want to see them or read them. So it's really forcing me a lot to focus on what do other people need to hear? What are things that might give some other people hope, right? Because I think we can all agree that we really have a pretty dysfunctional sort of mental health system, if you want to call it that, or environment. And it's easy to lose hope. And my message, what I try to convey on LinkedIn is there are a lot of people doing some really great things, and we have a lot of tools that work and can help people. And so that's really the thread of what I'm trying to do when I'm posting on LinkedIn. But I got to tell you, I enjoy it, and it forces me to think clearly. And I was curious, Michael, what about kind of the LinkedIn posts do you find? I don't know, what is it you like about them? I'm curious.
The motivational kind, and especially with someone with lived experience, I think of mental health a little differently. So how you bring up stuff relates to me as well.
Great. No, that's wonderful to hear. Thank you for that. And it's a combination of, I'm a psychiatrist. I talk to people who struggle with mental health problems every day, and I've had my own mental health struggles. So, yeah, I guess I almost see it as my duty as a doctor to play that role. And what's really interesting, and some people forget this, is the word doctor actually means teacher in Latin. And so I see it as my role and a responsibility.
Where do you want to see your mission in the next 3 to 5 years?
I would like to be, so the way I always think about things is I want to be as effective and helpful as I can to as many people as possible. Right now we're focused on rural states and communities because those are the ones that are often overlooked. People who kind of put together services and offerings tend to go to big cities because there are more people there. there's more money to be had. But in the end, the people in rural states and rural communities really struggle with access to care, and there are several social determinants of health that affect rural communities differently than they do people in urban or suburban communities. So, 3 to 5 years from now, I'd like to be in, let's say, 10 different states, helping people really get access to care no matter where they are. I want them to get access to care that is as good as they could find anywhere else. In other words, I don't see any reason why people in rural communities should get second-rate care or get type of care that's not as great as it would be in any other community. So that's really how I see ourselves, hopefully making a difference.
How can people reach out and learn more?
So, first of all, thank you for mentioning LinkedIn. They can go on LinkedIn. Again, look at my name, look it up, Eric Arzubi, and follow me there, because that's kind of the best way to really be connected to what we're trying to build and how we think about things. And then certainly if people are in Montana, Alaska, or Idaho, and they need to get care, is reach out to frontier.care. So again, it's frontier.care. Our practice is called Frontier Psychiatry, and we will be going into to other rural states very soon. And again, look out for that on LinkedIn as well.